A family's Christmas celebration turned deadly when 3 women died after eating a traditional holiday cake that was laced with arsenic. What initially seemed like a tragic accident quickly took a much darker turn, revealing a web of family tension, alleged secret poisonings, and a shocking suspect. But as investigators wrapped up their case, a chilling discovery now brings this investigation to an unexpected halt. I'm going to be speaking with a Brazilian criminal defense attorney to break down all of the details in this shocking case from abroad. A family came together to celebrate Christmas, and it was meant to be a joyous occasion. But everything spiraled out of control because of a homemade Brazilian cake. It is called Bolo de Natal. It was apparently prepared by 61-year-old Zeli Silva de Anos, the matriarch of this family, and what should have been a time for tradition and togetherness and happiness, it quickly turned into a nightmare because it turns out that this holiday staple, a fruitcake-like dessert filled with dried fruits and nuts soaked in liquor, apparently had something else in it: arsenic, poison. According to Brazilian police, several family members noticed this unusual spicy or unpleasant flavor when they started eating the cake. And when Zeli, who apparently made the cake, tried some of it, she told everyone else to stop eating it, but it was too late. Soon after, 3 family members, 58-year-old Maida Berenice Flores de Silva, 65-year-old Nusa Silva dos Anjos, and Nusa's daughter, 43-year-old Tatiana dos Anjos, they began feeling violently ill. They were rushed to the hospital. Their conditions got worse rapidly. And by the evening, according to the Daily Mail, Maida and Tatiana, they had suffered fatal heart attacks, and Nusa reportedly died of shock on Christmas Eve. Now, Zeli was rushed to intensive care where she would fight for her life for several days. Ultimately, she survived this ordeal. She was released from the hospital in January, according to Brazilian police. But again, she lost her sisters and her niece. And as this family tried to process these devastating losses, the investigation began by Brazilian authorities, and it didn't take long for them to make a shocking discovery: dangerously high concentrations of arsenic in the cake and in the bodies of the deceased. And this wasn't just food poisoning. This was just poisoning, plain and simple. The investigation soon pointed to their target, Daisy Moura dos Anjos, Zeli's daughter-in-law, as the primary suspect. She was temporarily arrested on suspicion of 3 homicide charges, 3 attempted homicide charges, but unfortunately, the sense of justice in this case was short-lived because on February 13th, she was discovered dead in her prison cell, with authorities suspecting a suicide by hanging. And get this, at the time of her death, police were reportedly actively investigating her for her alleged involvement in the poisoning of her father-in-law, who apparently died several months before this. His body was exhumed to do further examination, and apparently there were also high levels of arsenic found in his body. Now, we previously spoke with medical examiner Mary Jumbelik about the symptoms you would expect to see with arsenic poisoning. Take a listen.
It affects the GI system, the lining of the GI system, so there's vomiting, watery diarrhea right away. There can be abdominal cramping, muscle cramping, as well as tingling and numbness in the nerves. As that progresses, you get shock and heart failure. So the fact that you mentioned 2 of the victims were listed as dying from a heart attack makes perfect sense, because you get a kind of rapid dehydration with the arsenic. You lose the water inside your blood vessels. It goes into other parts of your body, and you have heart failure, electrical disturbance. The doctors at the hospital can also look at other blood tests if they suspect arsenic. So they can look at your blood cells by drawing a little bit of blood and looking at it under a microscope, and they can see certain details in the red blood cells that might point to arsenic poisoning. Also, it affects your blood cells, so you lose your white blood cells, your red blood cells, your platelets, and that would show up on lab tests at the hospital as well. After someone survives an arsenic poisoning, you can get changes in your nails, in your fingernails, where it stops the growth plate, and they're called Mies lines, and you can see white lines across the fingernails of arsenic poison victims.
Now, according to the civil police investigation, 7 people were present at the gathering on December 23rd. Of those, only 6 ate the cake. Among those who consumed it, it was Zeli, her 2 sisters, Maida and Nusa, Nusa's daughter, Tatiana, her 10-year-old grandson. Now, he was taken to the hospital, eventually discharged following the poisoning. But Zelly, the woman who baked the cake, ate apparently only 2 slices, and she was the only person to survive. According to AOL, she actually had the highest levels of arsenic in her blood. Again, she was rushed to the hospital, spent several days in intensive care, but then she was removed to a different ward. And then there was another surviving family member, Anuza's husband, and just think about the loss that he's endured through all this. Now, a lot of moving parts here. I want to talk about this, but I actually have a special guest to help break it down. So we are joined right now by Adriele Barca, a criminal defense attorney in Brazil. Thank you so much for coming on. Just your general thoughts on this story. And for those who aren't from Brazil, this is a popular cake, right? People serve this to their family during the holiday time. I mean, if you could talk to us about the cake and just what you have been hearing about this case, because it's obviously made waves across the world. This is a traditional cake that's served. It's a very popular cake.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And do you know how police started to suspect foul play here? Because I've seen reports that it might have stemmed from the funeral, that she attended the funeral, and people at the funeral were saying, you know, you didn't even like the victims in this case, and that's when investigators started to look at this. I mean, I'm still a little bit confused, and maybe you have more information about how they were able to tie it to Daisy.
Between everybody that was involved, she was the only one who had recent fights within members of the family, especially her mother-in-law. Everybody knows that she had fights with her mother-in-law for years, because even in her suicide note, she said that she thanked her mother-in-law for making her marriage a living hell. So she was the only one who apparently had any reason for that.
Let me ask you this. What charges was she going to be facing? Was she already charged? How does it work in Brazil in terms of, like, you know, here in the United States and a lot of our states, including New York, you have to be indicted by a grand jury in order to officially move the case forward. Was she charged? What was she going to be charged with? Do you know?
She wasn't officially indicted yet. She was in temporary arrest, just for the sake of the investigation. But she wasn't indicted until she died. So now she can't be indicted, of course. But she was going to be indicted with triple homicide, triple qualified homicide, and triple homicide attempt.
And what would the process of look like? How long till she would be charged? How long till she would go to trial? And what does a trial look like in Brazil?
In crimes that involve homicide and other life type, it's usually a jury that was going to make her sentence. It takes about, since she was going to be arrested for the whole time, I think it was going to be about 6 months until she was tried, at least.
But she was being investigated, at least with respect to the death of her father-in-law. Did you anticipate that she could have been charged with his death as well?
Yes. Yes, she was going to, because the police report discovered that she was poisoned with arsenic too. That was her modus operandi. It was going to happen that way.
Interesting. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the evidence that apparently linked Daisy to the crime. You know, investigators say it was shocking. It was irrefutable. I'm going to break down some of this a little further. So according to reporting from the outlet Globo, investigators revealed that arsenic had been present in the flour used to bake the cake. So the General Institute of Expertise, or IGP, in Rio Grande do Sul did an analysis, and they found that the flour contained arsenic concentrations 2,700 times higher than what was in the cake itself. Using X-ray fluorescence equipment, experts traced the arsenic contamination to the flour. Laura Regina Sokol Gris, head of the Forensic Chemistry Division at the IGP, explained that the arsenic in the flour was so much higher than what was found in the cake, confirming that it was the flour as the source of the contamination. And she said that, and this is translated from Portuguese, but reportedly said, "We tested the cake itself with this equipment. It was already very positive, so to speak, for the cake. And for the flour, it was a much higher concentration." Further forensic analysis revealed arsenic traces in the victims' bodies, in their stomachs, blood, and urine. Notably, according to investigators, Tatiana dos Anjos had the highest concentration of arsenic in her stomach, 384,000 micrograms per liter, 11,000 times the amount considered accidental. Margaret Mittman, director of the IGP, declared that the evidence was irrefutable, saying, and again, this is translated to English, "It is unquestionable that arsenic was in the cake, and it is unquestionable that the source in the cake recipe is the flour." By the way, for the charges that she could have been facing, murder charges, is there a death penalty in Brazil?
No.
No. So she would be looking at life in prison.
She would be looking at maximum 30 years. You could be sentenced to more than 30 years, but you cannot be in prison for more than 30 years in Brazil. Here's what happens. She was in temporary arrest, so she was in a prison where she was surrounded by people who were in the same conditions. It was fewer people where she was, but she was transferred on January 31 because her temporary prison was changed to a preventive custody. Temporary, you could be temporarily in prison for 30 days. After that, the judge has to analyze if you're going to be arrested in preventive custody for at least 90 days, or if they're going to put you on the streets. In that case, she was transferred to a bigger prison. And when you're in a bigger prison, Brazil has prisons that are overcrowded, very overcrowded. So she had to be isolated due to her case being very in the media. So there probably wasn't enough security around her. The workers in there have cells that they have to take care of with 10, 15 other prisoners. And she was alone in a prison cell, so I don't think they thought that they had to worry about her.